Dogs and cats can get infected with roundworm eggs and larvae almost anywhere. They can pick up worm eggs from their surroundings as they rummage around. The eggs are swallowed and enter the gut, where larvae hatch from the worm eggs. Depending on the animal's age and the strength of its immune system, the larvae penetrate the intestinal wall and embark on their migration through the body. They enter the blood vessels and are carried in the bloodstream to various organs. These organs are damaged by the migratory movements of the worm larvae. In young animals, the larvae often travel to the liver and then to the lungs via the bloodstream. From here, they reach the trachea, are coughed up, swallowed, and travel through the esophagus to the intestine, where they settle and develop into mature egg-laying adults. Adult worms can produce up to 200,000 eggs daily. The worm eggs, which are invisible to the naked eye, are excreted in the animal's feces. They're able to survive for several years in the soil and act as a source of infection for other animals. Some of the worm larvae migrating around the body do not return to the intestine. They become encapsulated, mainly in the muscles, and enter a state of dormancy. These arrested larvae in the muscles are the reason why worms are transmitted from the bitch to her pups. During the final trimester of pregnancy, the dormant larvae are reactivated by hormones. They travel to the uterus via the bloodstream and infect the unborn pups. Other larvae reach the mammary gland via the bloodstream. Newborn puppies and kittens can then be infected through their mother's milk.
Hey friends, we all know the importance of washing our hands before we eat. In fact, we have been doing it more since the pandemic has hit us hard, right? Besides preventing any illness and infection, it is also the best defense mechanism against the parasite known as pinworms. Yes, in today's video, let me tell you about a common condition a lot of kids go through and explore the best defense against pinworms. It is also known as enterobiasis, an internal disease caused by a tiny pin-shaped worm. It is a very common condition that infects people, especially school-aged kids. Although there is nothing much to worry about, they are extremely irritating to have. But do you know what causes pinworms and infections? Well, pinworm eggs can be found anywhere, including your clothes, bed sheets, and everything present in your house. They are so small that it is impossible to see without a microscope. And when we accidentally touch the contaminated object, the eggs get the opportunity to enter inside our body. These eggs then make their way through the digestive system and hatch in the small intestine. And when the worms grow a bit, they migrate to the large intestine where they turn into parasites. After a few weeks, the lady pinworm travels to the end of the large intestine, crawls out of the body at night to lay their eggs around the rectum, giving us an itchy sensation. Did you know? Pinworm spreads easily from person to person.
Did you know that people are voluntarily putting tapeworms inside their bodies? It's known as the tapeworm diet. It helps people lose weight by letting this parasite eat everything inside of them. But this diet can go very, very wrong. How would a tapeworm affect your body? Well, on today's challenge, we're going to find out by having you swallow a tapeworm. Think you can handle it? This is your body on tapeworms. Tapeworms are flat, segmented worms that can be as long as 25 meters. They can't live freely on their own, They need to be in the gut of an animal or a human to thrive. Animals can become infected with these parasites when grazing in pastures or drinking contaminated water. How long do you think a tapeworm can live inside your body? 1 week? 1 month? 20 years? We'll have your answer later in the episode. There are 2 ways to get infected. The most common tapeworm infection is called teniasis. You get this if you eat undercooked meat or fish from an infected animal. The tapeworm larvae in the animal muscle tissue would migrate to your gut. You can also get infected if you're in contact with animal feces or contaminated water from an animal with tapeworms. This type of infection is known as cysticercosis. You get this by ingesting microscopic tapeworm eggs. It's rare to get a parasite this way, but it can happen in countries with poor sanitary conditions. In both scenarios, you wouldn't feel a thing. If you have a cysticercosis infection, the eggs you ingested will hatch into mobile larvae once they've entered your intestines. They could migrate out of your intestines and infect organs other than the digestive system. But throughout your first week, it's likely you won't notice anything at all. Let's see what happens when we keep going. Let's go back to the teniasis infection. The tapeworm larva has developed into an adult tapeworm in your intestines and can be up to 7 meters long. It attaches to the inner wall of your intestines and feeds off the food you're digesting. You could feel nauseous, have abdominal pain, diarrhea, and you'd begin to lose weight. But it's also very likely that you wouldn't feel anything at all. You may find out you have tapeworms by taking a closer look at what you've produced while sitting on the toilet seat. At this stage, pieces of the tapeworm break off and exit your body via your stool. And they look just like tiny worms. Gross. Now that you've finally found out you have tapeworms, it's time to go to the doctor. If you're diagnosed with teniasis, your doctor will prescribe oral medication for 1 day. It would paralyze the adult tapeworm, which would let go of the intestine, dissolve, and exit your body via your stool. If the worms are large, you could have some stomach cramping when they pass. Okay, you managed to escape a teniasis infection, but what if you had cysticercosis instead? Well, if 3 months have passed and you haven't noticed this infection, things would get terrible. A stomach cramp or sudden weight loss would be the last thing you're worried about. That's because the mobile larvae that have migrated throughout your entire body are mature enough to form cysts in tissues like your lungs, brain, eyes, or liver. These cysts could grow large enough to crowd the functioning parts of the organ or reduce its blood supply. You could have headaches or allergic reactions. You might experience seizures in extreme cases. To get rid of these worms, you would need surgery or an organ transplant. And even after 20 years, it's still possible that the tapeworm could live inside of you without you even knowing. And your little buddy could measure more than 25 meters long. And if the tapeworm continued to grow, you would eventually experience a digestive problem as it blocks your appendix or your pancreatic ducts. So tapeworms are horrible and creepy, and you don't want them anywhere near you.
Liver flukes are parasites. A parasite is an animal that depends on another organism, the host, for food and shelter. In the case of liver flukes, they are internal parasites and can be found living in the body cavities of other animals. Adult liver flukes are often found on or in the liver of their hosts, hence their common name. Liver flukes are flatworms. There isn't a single taxonomic group classified as the liver flukes. Instead, they make up many groups that don't share a common ancestor. This means that liver flukes are a polyphyletic group of animals. Liver flukes can be found anywhere their hosts live, so just about anywhere is an option as long as each stage is able to fulfill necessary conditions in order to develop into further life stages. For example, free-living liver fluke larvae, meaning the larvae found outside of a host's body, can't live without water, so they're often found near water sources. Liver flukes begin life as an egg. The eggs are laid by adults and are excreted with the host's feces. The eggs hatch quickly into larvae called Miracidia if they come into contact with water. This larval stage is free-living, meaning they can live outside of a host, but only for a short time as they require moisture. The first host will not be the final host and is thus called an intermediate host. The liver fluke will spend time here, but will not develop to adulthood inside this particular organism. An example of an intermediate liver fluke host is a snail. Fish can act as an intermediate host for liver flukes as well, though. The Miracidia will burrow into the intermediate host's body cavity. Here they will form into a sac-like shape called a sporocyst, and as this sporocyst grows, new larvae will develop inside of it. These are called reedii. These reedii will burrow out of the sporocyst and move into the snail's digestive tract, where they'll feed and produce more larvae, which are called cercarii. These larvae have long tails and will leave the intermediate host to live in water, using their tails to get around. The cercarii will form into cysts and wait on vegetation to be eaten by a final host. Once in the final host, the cercarii will make their way to the host's liver and eat the tissue here. Eventually, they'll become adults, attached to a bile duct, and the process will begin anew. Here, the adults may live for decades, often going unnoticed by the host. In total, from egg to adult, the process takes about 20 weeks. In the case of humans, liver flukes are often ingested through consumption of raw fish, though even us vegetarians aren't completely safe because ingestion of raw plants, like raw watercress, as well as contaminated water, can also lead to an infection. Other hosts for liver flukes include sheep, rabbits, deer, including moose, kangaroos, wombats, camels, rats, beavers, boars, and many more. Like with tapeworms, it's usually not even apparent to a final host that the liver flukes are present, though bad infestations can lead to indigestion, abdominal pain, diarrhea, constipation, and nausea. In human society, liver flukes are treatable, but they've caused a lot of problems with livestock. Liver flukes can lead to lower quality meat and milk, and they're difficult to eradicate from an environment once they've become established. They may also infect our pets. Adult liver flukes are usually quite small, reaching only 30 millimeters in length and 10 millimeters in width, though the largest liver flukes can reach up to 80 millimeters long and 30 millimeters wide. As flatworms, they appear flat, and they're also leaf-shaped.